Now, a report by KPMG warns failure to strike a post-Brexit trade deal could cut the UK's economic growth rate by more than half next year, delaying what would have been a full recovery from the deepest recession it's had since records began. Now, this morning, we'll look at Brexit and how it relates to RCEP, a Biden White House, and how this all impacts UK retail and trade with partners like the Philippines. I'm glad British Chamber of Commerce Chairman Chris Nelson can join us. Hi, Chris. Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome.
Okay.
How are you?
We're doing great. Happy for you to be back on the show. Chris, I know that you recently hosted a webinar on retail, so let's start with that. I understand you had some very big names like Steve C. of Great Deals, and he handles most of the big brands on Lazada. What was your key takeaway from that webinar that you hosted?
I think the key takeaway is that obviously the growth in e-commerce has been propelled obviously by the 7 months of all the restrictions. But still, if you look at it and compare it, say, to the UK and other countries, e-commerce is still, obviously as a percentage, it is less. I think the other key thing as well that came across from Steve's excellent presentation was the fact that 80% of all current sales are by cash in the Philippines. If you look at that and compare it to the UK, everything is online, is obviously by credit card or debit card, and they're expecting the growth. So I think there's great opportunities here, even as you ease out of restrictions, even in 2021, that e-commerce will continue to grow. And that's been shown actually in the UK with key retailers such as Tesco and Sainsbury's, where their online sales are now growing much more than even in store.
Mm-hmm. You know, I've been talking to some insiders, Chris, and they're saying that, 11/11, which was supposed to be the biggest sale event of the year, at least for the Philippines, did not explode, so to speak, unlike in China. In fact, they're saying it's way, way weaker than last year's, perhaps. Could it be, one, that the novelty of e-commerce is starting to waver, or two, rather, that Filipinos are running out of cash or starting to run out of cash or savings already 8 months into the pandemic?
Well, I don't think it's running out of steam, the e-commerce. I think e-commerce will be here to stay and grow even more. And obviously there'll be changes and there'll be developments in the industry. I think linking it back to your very good point, I think obviously the concern should be as over looking at the economy. What are the economic stimulus plans? Not forget the British Chamber has been one of those chambers that's been advocating along with others further stimulus. We've had lots of discussion, of course, with the authors of the Arise bill. And I think it's a need to keep that going because obviously there is a desire, a need for further stimulus. So I'd probably give it to your first factor. And the fact I believe also that e-commerce will continue to grow.
Okay. Also, it's interesting because I saw the report that you guys came out with. At least for the first half of this year, Shopback Philippines said that Filipino consumers ordered nearly 5 times as much as they did in the same period last year. That's 9.1 million goods valued at 5.6 billion versus just around 1.3 billion. So it is picking up steam. It's here, it's here to stay, huh?
Oh, definitely. And I think you've also got to look at it. I mean, Chamber has been obviously involved, and what we're doing here is to promote, to try and get UK companies even more to use these platforms than others. But also we're linking it. We have obviously presentations by real estate companies. So obviously the way that's going to work in terms of how malls will be, how will people shop, even when there is a vaccine thereafter. I think the key is that e-commerce is going to grow. It's going to be a place. There will be regular shopping as well. Let's not, take that away. And I think the key for us is how can we get UK companies now involved, and obviously looking at platforms such as Great Deals and others, get entry into this market. Because let's not forget, the Philippine economy will recover, and it has been a strong performer, and you're a consumer-driven economy, and you're an economy of 110 million people. So that is a very attractive prospect for many British companies, retail and consumer brands.
Very curious, Chris, when you look at the member companies of the Chamber, how many of these UK businesses actually rely on e-commerce to drive top line?
Well, I think it's not been a top driver, but if you take Great Deals, obviously they have major companies, all our members, so they have Shell, they have Unilever, they have GlaxoSmithKline, decline. And I think what you're seeing is that companies are moving into those platforms in addition to obviously what was their normal or traditional way of selling. And I think the key here is it's a complementary way of doing it. Again, if I refer back to the UK, because it's a good comparison, because obviously that's our key is to promote trade investment. Two major supermarket chains, Tesco's and Sainsbury's, both reporting, I think Tesco's going to lead at 60 billion in sales and Sainsbury's is going to be at 30 billion online sales. So I think it's a support, and our major for the opportunities for other companies to enter the market, because of course that could be a much quicker way to come in. And also looking, and by the way, when we did the webinar, we also had a presentation by KPMG, which looked at the overall administration and regulation. So I think it's a great opportunity for UK companies.
Okay, looking at the bigger picture now, the last time we spoke, Chris, former VP Joe Biden hasn't yet won the White House. RCEP was still just a proposal. Fast forward to today, the ASEAN ministers signed the mega trade deal last weekend, covering 11 ASEAN countries, plus Japan, Australia, South Korea, and China. India, of course, is out. Well, this mega trade deal essentially paves the way for more Chinese goods to enter these markets. What does this mean to UK goods and services?
Well, look, I think it's a very interesting deal, and it's come at a very critical time. And look, it covers a large portion. I think it just gives a further incentive, from my perspective, for the UK to do further trade deals. The first trade deal, major one announced, of course, is with Japan, which will be effective on the 1st of January, and that covers a large portion of goods. And I think this is a good incentive for the UK to sign similar deals. Obviously, what we'd like to see is deals with obviously ASEAN, and also I know that the UK has been presenting at the recent ASEAN summit, and the UK, based on my involvement, is very much interested in this area. And obviously linked to that, of course, is the Philippines, that we look at the Philippines and promote it back in the UK as a gateway to Southeast Asia.
This also, I imagine, carries a strong political message by participating countries in their commitment to free and open trade at a time when multilateral trade seems to be, showing cracks. From the U.S. perspective, though, new President Joe Biden from the U.S., are you seeing a strong possibility that he will return the U.S. to the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP? And UK has played a very critical role in negotiations for TPP. Can you think the TPP exist alongside RCEP?
I think so. I mean, I think, first of all, my assumption would be, and I think everyone else is, that we'll be, once, obviously, President-elect Biden is there, which is obviously be January in 2021, there'll be a return to, let's say, a more normal discussion on trades, or multilateral arrangements. And I think he will be looking at that. Of course, you've also got to take considerations is there will be many other issues to be handled. But the UK is clearly going to focus on trade, and obviously it looks forward to, and our Prime Minister has already had a phone call with President-elect Biden. And I see there's a lot of impetus here, and I think also, let's put it in the context of the impact of the pandemic. I think that many people have said, and including we've had Secretary Lopez, one of our many guests, trade and increasing trade is important for all countries as we seek to get growth back and obviously overcome the impact of the pandemic.
Chris, we can't let you go without asking you this. We always ask you this before we end this discussions. Many people may have written off 2020, but can we know if there are green shoots that you're seeing? Perhaps new UK investors coming here to the Philippines, new brands coming here, or vice versa?
And I always appreciate the question, and I think it's great you ask it. And the answer is, yes, I think we can say we see green shoots. I can't give you specifics in terms of the interest level, even at this time, right, when, of course, people have restrictions in the UK, have considerations over what would the final deal for Brexit. We are still getting interest from many, many UK companies. We've already helped over 2,500. We see a lot of interest in the retail sector. We see a lot of interest, of course, in outsourcing, in manufacturing, in machinery. So, yes, I can honestly say that we are optimistic, and we are convinced that UK trade investment will grow and accelerate, and we're looking forward to more trade deals.
Okay, on that note, thank you very much, Chris, for joining us this morning.
Thank you.